I gave my mom my house. Not rented, not loaned. Gave full deed. No conditions. 3 years later, I showed up for dinner. And my stepdad told me the guest room was taken. He pointed to the garage. Cold floor, no heater. I stood there, suitcase in hand, while their dog slept inside on my couch. The couch I bought. In the house I gave. Before we dive in, where are you listening from right now? What's your story? Drop it in the comments. My name's Talia Monroe. I was 31 when this all went down. At the time, I was living out of a suitcase bouncing between disaster relief contracts. That fall, I had just wrapped a 7-month stint in Guatemala and flown back to Louisville. Home, or what I thought was still home. The house I pulled up to sat just off a quiet street in Jeffersontown, lined with red maples already dropping leaves onto the cracked pavement. I'd bought that place when I was 26, a 2-bedroom brick ranch with a screened-in porch and this stubborn little lilac bush that bloomed like hell every spring. But after my mom remarried and hit a rough financial patch, I signed it over to her. It felt like the right thing to do. She needed stability. Reed, her new husband, was a contractor with spotty work and 2 kids from a previous marriage. I thought giving her the house would give her solid ground. I didn't think I'd be the one left on the outside looking in. When I pulled up, the porch had changed. The flower pots I'd planted were gone. A gravel patch took their place. The welcome mat, the one Mom and I picked out during a Black Friday sale, was replaced with something generic that just said, "Live, laugh, love" in chipped font. The front door was painted a dull gray. I don't know why that hit me so hard, but it did. I remember standing there, one hand on my suitcase handle, staring at that door and feeling off, like I was walking into someone else's life. I rang the bell. After a pause, the door opened just wide enough to reveal Reed, barefoot, holding a mug. "You're early," he said flatly. No smile. No, welcome home. Just that. I forced a small laugh. Just wanted to get settled in before dinner. Figured I could help out. He looked past me, not even pretending to care. "We set something up for you out back." I blinked. Out back. He didn't answer. Just walked off. I followed him around the side gate, dragging my suitcase behind me. The garage door was already open. There was a cot, a thin blanket, no heater. A single lamp plugged into an extension cord snaked across the cold cement floor. It smelled like gasoline and mildew. "The guest room's under renovation," Reed muttered without looking at me. Except I glanced toward the house and saw the blinds open. The guest room wasn't under renovation. The bed was made. Neat, white sheets, folded towels. I turned back to him. Right. He was already halfway back through the gate. I stood there in the garage, hand still gripping the suitcase handle. My breath came out in a fog. It was October in Kentucky, the kind of cold that slips into your bones before you know it's there. I told myself it was temporary, that maybe the heat was broken, that maybe there was a miscommunication. But when I stepped into the kitchen to ask for a space heater, no one looked up. My mother wasn't even there to greet me. I spotted her through the back window, laughing with Stacy Reed's daughter on the sunroom couch. The sunroom I'd had built. The yellow throw blanket my hands had crocheted wrapped around Stacy's legs like it belonged to her. I went back to the garage. I sat on the cot, phone in hand, fingers numb as I scrolled through my contacts. Stopped on Mom's name. Called. Voicemail. I set the phone down. Laid back. The springs squeaked. I stared up at the exposed rafters, mouthing words I didn't even believe anymore. "You did the right thing. You were just trying to help." The garage groaned with the wind. Every few minutes, a car passed outside, its headlights brushing the crack beneath the door. I didn't sleep. Just before dawn, I heard it. Laughter. Mugs clinking. I sat up, pulled the blanket tighter. My toes were frozen, but my hearing sharpened. Reed's voice. She's still here. Thought she had more pride than that. No effort to whisper. She gave us the house. He went on. Doesn't mean she gets to walk in like she owns the place. Stacy laughed. Did she think she'd be sleeping inside? This isn't a shelter? They laughed again. I stood, walked to the garage door, cracked it open. From that inch-wide gap, I could see right into the kitchen. Reed by the island, coffee in hand. Stacy perched on a bar stool like a queen holding court. She's not even family, Reed said. Not even family. The rage didn't come all at once. It arrived like cold water dripping down your neck, a slow realization, a quiet freeze. I thought back to the day I signed the papers. I'd worn a navy blazer, bought it special, sat in a notary's office, beaming. Mom hugged me afterward and said, "We'll always make room for you, sweetheart." But now she hadn't even come to the door. I closed the garage door quietly. My hand was shaking, but not from the cold anymore. Back on the cot, I stared at the floor, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I felt still. I felt ready. I picked up my phone, opened my contacts again, scrolled to one name, David Cardenas, my old friend, my real estate attorney, and I made the call that would change everything. The phone call lasted less than 3 minutes. David picked up on the second ring, just like he used to when we were cramming for finals back in undergrad. "Talia," he said. Surprised? "Yeah," I answered, keeping my voice level. "I need you to pull up the deed file on the house. I think something's off." He didn't ask a million questions. Just, "Give me 15 minutes. I hung up, sat on the cot, and stared at the garage door like it might blink or breathe. My jaw hurt from clenching. My fingers kept tightening into fists without me realizing it. I thought about the time I spent painting that kitchen lemon yellow, because Mom once told me it made her feel like the sun was visiting. I thought about the shelves I built in the hallway, the handrails I had installed for her after her knee surgery. I had tried to build her safety, and now I was shivering in a garage while her new family ate breakfast with the heat on full blast. 15 minutes later, David called back. "Okay, I've got it in front of me." He said, "Talia, the transfer never went through. She signed the papers, but she never filed them with the county, legally. The title is still in your name." I didn't speak, just sat there, stunned, letting that truth drop into place like a stone in a dry well. "You still there?" "Yeah," I whispered. "Thanks." When the call ended, I didn't even have time to put the phone down before I heard Reed's voice from the porch. "Who the hell are you talking to?" I slipped my phone into the duffel bag just before the door slammed open. He stepped in, still wearing pajama pants and that smugness he always wore like cologne. "You think you're clever?" he barked. Calling lawyers now, I stood, slow, steady. I made a phone call. That's all. He stepped closer, his mug clutched like a threat. "This house doesn't belong to you anymore," he said. I didn't flinch. "Then why are you so nervous?" That shook him. He stormed out, muttering curses under his breath. I let the door close on its own. Inside the silence, I replayed that moment again and again. His twitch, his panic. That wasn't the confidence of a man who thought he was on solid ground. That was the twitch of someone who knew it was starting to crumble. The next few days, I kept to myself. I moved slow, quiet. But everything I did was calculated. I started gathering paperwork, emails, photos of the house before and after, the crocheted blanket, the sunroom I funded, the invoice from the contractor with my name on it. I labeled a folder ownership evidence, slid it under my cot like armor beside a soldier. I didn't tell my mother what I knew, mostly because she hadn't said a single word to me. Not about the garage, not about the silence, not even when I walked past her in the kitchen. She looked away like I was a shadow her new life couldn't afford to acknowledge. One night, I was scrolling through my phone just to distract myself. That's when I saw it. Photos, a dinner party, the dining room glowing with warm light, Reed in a blazer, Stacy in a cocktail dress, my mother smiling with a wine glass raised. In my house, celebrating new beginnings, the caption said, and not a single mention of me. I wasn't just being excluded, I was being erased. I texted Melina, my childhood friend. Ever feel like your family's writing a story and cutting your pages out of it? She replied 2 minutes later, what happened now I didn't even know how to start explaining. So instead, I opened my notes app and wrote, they used my generosity as a leash. And now that I've stopped following, they're trying to pretend I never existed. I didn't post it. Not yet. But something in me had shifted. The garage didn't feel like exile anymore. It felt like planning space. A few days later, a thick invitation appeared on the kitchen counter. Heavy cardstock, gold trim. I walked in to grab a glass of water and saw it just sitting there like a trophy. Dinner to celebrate new beginnings, it read. Hosted by Reed and Emma Glenn. Not Monroe, not even Marianne. Just M. Like she was an accessory to his surname now. Not a word about me. No mention of home of Talia Monroe. Nothing. I flipped it over. No note. Just an RSVP number and a dress code. I set it down gently. Walked back to the garage. I already knew what I was going to wear that night. I didn't wear makeup, no jewelry, no heels. Just a black sweater, jeans, my hair tied back. I didn't want to be mistaken for someone trying to belong. When I walked into the dining room, it was already full. Laughter, wine glasses, my mother's red shawl draped over her shoulders like everything was perfect. No one greeted me. I slid into the farthest chair at the end of the table, invisible, watching. Reed stood and raised his glass. We're grateful to everyone here tonight. This house has been a blessing, and we're especially thankful to our tenant. He looked at me like I was some distant cousin who had wandered in from the cold, for generously allowing us to stay while we get back on our feet. Polite laughter. I didn't even blink. My mother nodded in agreement. Her lips curled into that soft, new, polite smile she used to wear for PTA meetings. No apology, no acknowledgement. Halfway through dinner, I slipped into the kitchen for water. Leora Reed's other daughter followed me. She leaned against the fridge, arms crossed. "Why are you letting them do this to you?" she asked. "You gave them the house, didn't you?" I shook my head. "No. I loaned them a lie I thought was temporary." She blinked, her confidence cracked. "Then why let them win?" I stared at the faucet. "Because they think I'm still playing the same game." That night, I didn't raise my voice, didn't flip the table, didn't make a scene. I simply stood, lifted the crystal centerpiece I'd custom ordered for this room 5 years ago, carried it down the length of the table. People watched. No one stopped me. When I passed Reed's chair, I leaned in just enough for him to hear, "The only reason your glass hasn't shattered is because I still own this table." His smile faltered. I walked into the kitchen and placed the centerpiece on the counter. My home, my rules. I didn't need applause. They'd made their introductions. Now it was time for mine, and I hadn't even started yet. The night after that dinner, I couldn't sleep. Not because of the cold this time, though it was still cold. It was the kind of stillness that happens when you know something's about to crack. I sat on the cement floor, legs crossed, an old notebook in my lap. The same one I used in college. Pages worn thin at the edges. I wrote for hours, not for anyone else. Just me getting it out before it buried me. I wrote about the couch that used to be mine, about how silence feels like a second betrayal. about how I gave them a house and they gave me a cot. I slipped the letter between the pages and tucked it under the scratchy blanket on my cot. I didn't know it had fallen out until the garage door slammed open the next morning. Reed stood there, face red, paper crumpled in his fist like a confession he wasn't ready to read. "You left this lying around," he snapped, waving the page. "Thought you were clever hiding it under your damn mattress. I didn't move. That's what you really think of us," he spat. "You think you're some victim, some martyr." I looked him dead in the eye. Did I lie? His jaw clenched. He didn't answer. Then my mom appeared, robe tied tight, hair still in rollers. "What is going on?" she demanded. Reed turned to her, eyes wild. "She wrote this trash, said we used her, said we treated her like garbage in her own house." Mom's gaze flicked from him to me. "Tell me that's not true," she whispered. I didn't say a word. She stiffened. "You think we owe you just because you gave us a roof." She said it like that, gave, as if I'd handed them a gift and was now rudely asking for a receipt. "We've done nothing but include you," she added. "You're the one who acts like some kind of victim." I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice. I just walked past them both into the house. For the first time in weeks, I walked into my own kitchen like I belonged. I opened the cabinet, pulled out a sealed envelope the deed copy David had sent me, held it up, looked Reed in the eye and said, "This isn't your house to yell in." His mouth opened. Nothing came out. I walked right back to the garage, closed the door behind me, and didn't look back. Later that day, my phone buzzed. A DM from Melina. She'd posted a video. In it, she told the whole story. Not my version, hers. She talked about our childhood sleepovers. The day I called her crying from Guatemala when Mom got remarried. How I bought the house. How I gave it away. How I was sleeping in a garage while strangers toasted to new beginnings inside. She won't say this herself, Melina said, eyes steady into the camera. But I will. By noon, it had over 1 million views. By evening, 2. The comments rolled in like a tide. They used her. This house is hers. Period. Mom or not, silence is betrayal. I didn't cry. Didn't smile either. I just watched, feeling the weight of strangers echo what I'd been screaming silently for weeks. Then, like clockwork, Reed tried to flip the narrative. I was sitting in a corner booth at a diner on Bardstown Road, sipping lukewarm coffee, scrolling through messages, when a man in uniform walked in and asked for me by name. He handed me an envelope. "Ma'am, you've been served." Inside a petition for a temporary protective order, Reed was claiming I was unstable, a danger to myself and others. Attached to the paperwork, a paragraph ripped straight from my letter. No context, no explanation, just raw grief, twisted into evidence. He'd taken my private thoughts and turned them into a weapon. I didn't panic, didn't even go home. Instead, I turned right toward the University Medical Center to Dr. Bennett, my therapist. She'd known everything, months of sessions, every quiet breakdown. Every time I almost texted Mom and didn't, she read the petition in silence, then looked up at me. "You've come here every week," she said. "You've never once shown signs of instability. What he's doing is manipulative, and it ends now." She wrote a full evaluation, detailed every visit, included clinical notes, her official judgment in black and white. That night, I sent it to David. I also wrote, "Please draft eviction notices for Reed Glenn and Stacy Glenn." 2 days passed quietly, too quietly. Then came the sheriff cruiser. I heard it before I saw it, tires crunching gravel. Blue lights brushed the garage wall like dawn. I stood, walked to the front porch, waited. The deputy approached Reed, clipboard in hand. "I'm here to deliver a court order," he said flatly. "You and any other non-title holding occupants have 48 hours to vacate the premises." "This is our house," Reed snapped. She gave it to us. The deputy didn't flinch. This property is registered under Talia Monroe, legal owner. Any refusal to comply will result in removal. Reed blinked like someone waking up mid-dream. She's lying. He turned to me. You don't get to do this. I met his eyes. Calm. I already did. His face collapsed. He stepped back. No threats. No final word. Just shock. He wasn't used to the law being on my side. He didn't know what it looked like when silence stopped meaning surrender. Mom didn't say a word. Not when Reed packed his bags. Not when Stacy slammed the door. Not when the car disappeared down the street. But the next morning, she knocked. No suitcase. No makeup. Coat misbuttoned. Eyes swollen. He left. She whispered. Took the savings. Took the car. I didn't know. I didn't think she trailed off. I stepped aside. Let her in. But only as far as the entryway. She looked around like the house was speaking a language she didn't understand. Then, quietly, "Can I stay here for a while?" I stirred honey into my tea. The spoon tapped the ceramic. "I gave you this house once." I said, "You gave me a garage." She looked down, didn't answer. "This house doesn't have space for what you brought into it," I said evenly, "but I'll pay for a motel. That's more than either of you did for me." She flinched. I handed her the printed voucher I'd prepared that morning, part instinct, part inevitability. We stood at the door. She didn't beg, didn't argue, just turned, walked down the steps, and didn't look back. The door clicked shut behind her. I didn't move for a while, just stood there at the entryway, holding the edge of the table with one hand like I needed something steady. Then I turned back into the house. My house. The walls didn't feel like they were watching anymore. The air didn't feel borrowed. There was just stillness. And it wasn't cruel this time. It was clean. I sat on the couch, the same one they'd all gathered around 2 nights ago, sipping wine like I was just part of the wallpaper. I let my fingers trace the armrest. It still had a small tear from when I moved it in. Years ago. I tried to sew it once and gave up halfway. Mom had laughed about it back then. Now, it felt like a scar. Honest. Unapologized for. The deed sat on the coffee table. Edges slightly curled. My name printed clear and centered. Only mine. No shared signature. No initials to explain. Just one name, the one they'd tried so hard to erase. That afternoon, I walked into the guest room, the one that had been under renovation. Sunlight poured in through the blinds. The bed was still neatly made. I sat at the edge, then laid back. I didn't cry, didn't smile, just breathed. I spent the next few days cleaning. Not because it was messy, it wasn't. It was just filled with the wrong fingerprints. I boxed up Reed's mugs, Stacy's nail polish bottles, the tacky wall art that said things like, "Family where life begins." It all went into storage. I didn't throw anything out. I wasn't angry anymore. I just didn't need it in sight. I unpacked the things I had kept in bins, the blanket I'd crocheted for Mom, the framed photo of my dad in his old army uniform, the tea kettle with the dented lid. One by one, the pieces of me returned. A week later, I got a message from Laura, an old coworker. Just saw Reed's post got deleted. I figured out what happened. "Proud of you." I didn't reply. Didn't need to. Some things are better left without punctuation. It was a rainy Tuesday when I stopped by the Jefferson County title office. Just wanted to see it with my own eyes. The woman behind the desk, wearing a red cardigan and tired eyes, typed in the address and said, "Yes, ma'am." Still listed under Talia Monroe. No pending transfers. No liens. You're clear. I thanked her and stepped outside. Let the rain fall on me for a minute. Didn't even use my umbrella. I just stood there, water soaking through my sleeves, cooling everything that had been burning too long. The garage was still cold, but it was empty now. Clean. Quiet. I stood in it one morning, sipping coffee, remembering every word spoken through those walls, the laughter, the mockery, the lies. I didn't erase them. I didn't try to repaint it like none of it happened. I just stood there until I could say out loud, "You don't live here anymore." And it didn't echo. A few days later, I got a handwritten letter in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. My mom's. Inside was a single page. I didn't know how far it had gone. I thought if I stayed quiet, it would settle. I didn't think you'd ever leave, and I didn't expect to be left. I'm sorry, not for everything. Just for what I can admit. I folded it once, then twice, tucked it into the back of my notebook. Not forgiveness, not closure, just a record. A timestamp on the end of the version of her I used to wait for. I saw Reed one more time. In the parking lot of a hardware store off Shelbyville Road, he was alone, pushing a cart, hoodie up, moving fast. He saw me, stopped, then kept walking. No words, no threats, not even a glance back. And that, somehow, said everything. Weeks passed, then months. I kept going. Painted the kitchen a new color sage green this time, replaced the couch, donated the dining room chairs, adopted a dog from the shelter named her Moxie. She sleeps on the couch now. The new one. No apologies needed. Sometimes people ask if I'd ever speak to my mother again. I don't know. That's the honest answer. I don't live in revenge, but I also don't pretend to forget. What I do know is this: you don't owe anyone the parts of you they tried to bury, even if they share your blood, even if they raised you. Sometimes protection looks like distance, and sometimes love, when it stops being safe, has to be loved from far away. The house is quiet now, but it's mine. And this time, that word means more than paper. It means no more sleeping in garages, no more waiting by the door, no more shrinking into corners of the life I built. It means when I sip my tea in the morning, I do it without flinching, without listening for footsteps I didn't invite. It means this time, I saved a key, not for them, not even for me, for the version of me they tried to write out, but who showed up anyway and stayed.